Oh, I see. I can see it here.
Okay, you can see it here. So you
Yeah.
have the link. Hello, welcome everybody to this first live stream session of On the Compile in French. I'm with Inigo Quilez. People in the Facebook stream, let us know if you hear if we. Okay, so
Oh, sorry. Switching this off. There's too many echoes.
all right, so I'm gonna switch in French, and after we're back to English. So it's good, just because I introduce like the stuff. Ok, donc nous sommes avec Inigo Quilez, créateur de Shadertoy, un gars qui a travaillé chez Pixar, un gars qui a travaillé chez Oculus aussi. Bref, un pionnier du rendu. So we are. I don't know if you understood. You told me
I understood. Yeah, yeah.
you don't speak, but you understand. So I think the best way to start this is to is like to introduce yourself, present us a bit, like what you do in rendering, and it's very a show on rendering, but I like to talk with the human behind like some projects and stuff like this. So if you
Mhm.
can go, then
Yeah. So yeah, as you said, I've been working mostly on rendering since the beginning when I started with computers when I was 12. So I was born in San Sebastian, small city in the Basque Country between, well, in Spain, but very close to France. And then I work in virtual reality in the early 2000s in Belgium, in Brussels. That's where I learned some French. Back then was with huge silicon graphics machines, and you needed like $100,000 equipment to do VR, but that was what we got. Then I went to work at Pixar, where I did um, work on offline rendering instead of real time. Um, I learned a lot about lighting and composition and more of the artistic side of computer graphics and not so much the algorithmic stuff. And then I worked in Oculus, where I did a bit of both, where I was doing films and we were trying to discover the language of cinematography in a real time context and in a virtual reality environment. But I was doing both low level programming and high level art direction and things. And then I created a painting program called Quill for painting in virtual reality and animating. And then I became the lead for that project for about 4 years
at Facebook, right?
at first Oculus and then Facebook, which are parent companies. So it's a
So
matter of logistics where you land in one of those two companies.
and
And then, yeah, go ahead.
no, sorry, go for it. There's a bit of
So,
delay, so sometimes it's not that I want to cut you, but sometimes with the audio.
got it. Okay. And then in my spare time, I've been doing a lot of computer graphics as well. First in the demo scene, which is this underground community of computer graphics and artists, people in Europe mostly. And I joined in 1998, and I was focused mostly on making computer graphics with very small executables, where you try to generate as much data, visuals, textures, meshes, and sound from as little amount of code as possible. And then related to that, I created Shadertoy about 7 years ago. Although the first version was 10 years ago, but I made Shadertoy where I took that spirit of doing a lot of things with very little amount of code, but I made it in a more less underground way where I make it well exposed so that people can have a username and they can associate the work to their name, not necessarily a nickname, and also where the code is free and available right from the beginning. As soon as you publish your piece, the code is there for everyone to analyze. And then I've been also doing a lot of educational content where I have a website where I publish all ideas or experiments. Well, not all of them because I don't have time to write every single thing I do, but I try to publish about all the major things that I find. Some of them are some discoveries, never big ones, but little discoveries. Sometimes are just things I learned, and I put it all online for people to learn.
And on your website, there's a lot of stuff on like you've been publishing since the late 90s, I think, one of your
Right.
first
Yeah.
articles. You're electrical engineer, on your academia.
Yes.
How much does it serve you? Like on, I know a lot of people ask you this question in interview, but I just wanted to, because
Yeah.
this is math, but such as engineering, but it's not the same math. Like there's mostly like
Yeah. It is not. It's a good question because everything I know about computer graphics and programming, it's something I learned on my own by either reading or looking at somebody else's code, which in turn motivated me creating Shadertoy to kind of give back again to the community because I learned everything from the internet. But the maths I was studying there didn't include anything related to number theory or permutations, combinatorics. None of that. I never learned that
it was
as
like
an engineer.
applied calculus and Fourier stuff.
Exactly. Just calculus, geometry, of course, but mostly Fourier transforms, Laplace transforms, calculus, and things like that. So it does help because anything that has to do with data compression or things like that, I can work on those environments. I guess the main thing that studying not computer graphics helped me is to approach things differently, I suppose, because I never learned how to do anything through a book. So I had to find my way. And that meant that first I had to reinvent the wheel many times. Like I had to discover by myself things that I could have just read about. But that meant I got used to discovering new things and giving a try, giving a go to problems instead of just looking up how to solve them. And it also meant that I found variations to some solutions that normally wouldn't be implemented the way I did. So overall, I think I am in a place where, because I don't have that formal background in computer graphics, but I do have it in electrical engineering, I'm ready to try things in different ways, I guess, to solve problems differently. And
And
most of the times I just land on the solution that everyone else landed. But every now and then I hit some little gem there that no one found. Yeah.
And I want to go on, like you've talked about Shadertoy, which is the, like, first I want to lead the interview more on like we discussed the project, human side, like the computer graphic culture in general, rendering. And then after we're gonna go through some more geeky and nerdy stuff. So talk about SDF, and I really want to approach you like, how do you find them, the analytical form. So, but you we're gonna get back to Pixar and offline rendering. It's a subject I'd like to talk with you, but Shadertoy is a platform that I use like almost every day, like such a lot of people do. And I've realized that there's also a huge love and huge community out there. Was this a mindset behind Shadertoy, or did you like did you wanted to create a platform where like just host your own shader and then people got completely crazy, and there's a very big and nice culture there and you learn so much. So what was your mindset behind Shadertoy?
The mindset was to build a community for sure from day -1. So I had first created a small shader toy, and it was called That Way in 2009 with the first WebGL implementation that Firefox released. And I got people to, I did a bit of a reach out to people I knew, and I got them to send me shaders by email, and I would publish them myself in that website. It was called, yeah, it was hanging somewhere uh, from my main website's URL. But I had to ask people to send me the code by themselves. Then 2 years later, a friend of mine, Ricardo Cabello, Spaniard as well, Demoscene as well, who made 3.gs, 3GS.
Wait, oh, that's him who created, and you were like the Beauty Pie duo.
No. He's not my. We didn't partner, but he made his own version of Shadertoy on his own, which was called GLSL Sandbox, and that got very popular because people would upload shaders on their own without having to send him emails like they had to do with my site. The problem with his page was, I think, that there was no attribution. Like no one knew who was the owner of each shader. And I thought that was a pity that the sense of community was lost. It was just anonymous people sending oftentimes duplicated shaders without opportunities to talk about the shader, discuss about it. So that's when I joined with my actual partner and colleague, partner in crime for this business, which is Paul Jeremias, who works at Pixar now. And together we built the new Shadertoy with community as a first citizen feature. Like you have to register to get in, put your name. We don't use it for anything. We don't want your emails other than for letting you know that someone commented on your shader. But that way, you can build as a user of Shadertoy. The idea was that you would be able to build a reputation. Like this is my name, these are my shaders. So yeah, the idea was to build a community for sure. The fear was, will people respond to this proposal? Will they want to join in when there are so many other communities already? You have the Demoscene community with their own websites and portals. You have, there are a trillion things. But it did work, mostly I think because the first round of shaders were injected by people that I handpicked before the website was public. So I emailed 20 colleagues from the game industry, the film industry, from the demo scene, and I asked them for a favor, which was to publish 2 or 3 shaders in the website. So by the time we opened and went public, there was already a good collection of very interesting shaders, and I think that was the hook to start getting everyone else to join in. Yeah.
Oh, that's the very nice backstory. And does Shadertoy still evolves nowadays? Do you like new?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so Paul and I we meet every Tuesday night. We have dinner and then we add new features or fix bugs in Shadertoy. So yeah, it's a slow pace in that it's not our job. It's not a full-time thing. It is also not. There is no ambition to grow it or sell it or monetize it or making it into a business. Although it might have to happen at some point if we want to give better features to the users, like storing their own data and so on. We might have to pay servers, which means we might have to start maybe thinking about how to monetize, not for everyone, but maybe for some users. I don't know. Anyway, because we don't have big plans for it or we don't depend on it to make a living, we are taking it easy and enjoying the ride versus having to rush. And in that sense, we add features as we please and as we find them interesting. And the other thing is that there are many features that some hardcore users are desperate to have, myself included. I'm probably the user number one of Shadertoy, or number two, perhaps.
Which one? What kind of features does people want?
We all want to have more control on the multipass system. So when you write a shader in different passes, we want to control not only which resolution they are, but also which pixel format they have, integer versus float, or how often they refresh. Does every pass run every frame or every other frame, or it runs 3 times per frame? So all those controls have to happen if we want to improve the algorithms. But there are other features which are less interesting or less sexy, but which are more useful for the broader user base of Shadertoy, like being able to follow a creator that you like, or get notifications when they upload a new shader, or sending messages across users so they can discuss and get in touch for a business or whatever they want to do. So there's always this tension between what I want as a user and what I want as a product manager of the.
Yeah, but that's a very interesting point because there's the graphic engine or basically the GLSL code that runs on Shadertoy and how you treat them is a thing. But then you also mention it as like a social network, so I guess there's a lot of like non-oriented graphics programming, like just following and stuff like this. And
Exactly. Yeah.
so you've learned web programming too, but I don't want to go into web programming. But like, it's and when you work at Pixar, let's go on the Pixar way. You work on offline rendering,
Right.
so ray tracing, path tracing, BS.
No, at the time, I think Pixar switched to full path traced and ray traced rendering just 3 years ago. So, and I left 5 years ago. So, no, at the time it was rasterization.
Oh, so all the movies like Cars and stuff, they were made using rasterization.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, that's
It's a variation of rasterization where it's not exactly the same as how the GPU rasterizes things, which is mostly in screen space. They split the meshes into tiny, tiny micropolygons, as they call them, in object space, and then they splat those into the screen. But it's rasterization,
yeah.
one form of rasterization, meaning you cannot just cast array to query global information about the scene, like is there a shadow here or is there an object blocking the light? So although you could do it, it was very expensive, and 99% of things were just shadow mapped based or point cloud based to bake ambient occlusion and things like that. So yeah, I think they kept using rasterization until the good dinosaur, which was rasterized, but some shadows were ray traced.
And
And
you
then there's ink changed to path tracing, I think.
and you've worked on few movies there,
Yeah,
especially the environment of
right.
how is it the movie with the princess with the orb?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you mentioned on some of your stream that you're much more like environment and procedural environment is your comfort zone,
Yes.
or you're more not necessarily that you don't learn and you don't do this anymore, but like it's do you still find yourself having challenge to generate new kind of terrains, and like what's your process when you start to write like a scene? We're gonna put some of your scene in the show note, like
Mhm.
the jumping, the
Yeah.
Greek temple. Like it's mind blowing. Like when we see this, but then when you the live stream the 6 hour one, that's a masterpiece. But like what's your creative process like when you start to not only technical, it can be technical,
Yeah.
it can be like
Mhm. Yeah. Well, so there were a lot of questions there. On the terrains or landscapes versus characters, I suppose, which is how you normally divide every team that is making a game or a film. I guess games too, but it's the sets or environments and the creatures, monsters, characters, whatever you call them. So I've traditionally been doing uh, sets or landscapes or terrains or environments because it's easiest. Um, I grew up in the Basque country in Spain, northern Spain. It's a lot of mountains. I spent my childhood either hiking or skiing. So I know how those things look, and I normally when I make any of those, and this is a bit tight to the question about the process, but when I do a landscape, I always work from memory. I don't look at reference pictures or anything, not because I shouldn't, which I should, which is the right thing to do, but just for the game of it. It's like a painting, and then characters is something I had never done before until a year ago, I guess, and I took it as a challenge. Like, of course, I can keep learning and doing better landscapes. Not that my landscapes are um, the best out there at all, but um, they became easy enough to do that even refining my process and getting better, that it would be a bit of a refinement thing where I would get slightly better with every, the more effort I put, I would get smaller and smaller quantities of getting better. It would be like a diminishing returns thing. While making characters, it's an open field which I have never touched. So I can do a lot of progress very quickly. Again, not that I'm going to reach a super high level, but I can get better than I am now, which I'm bad, very quickly. So that's exciting because it's a new thing for me. I have to learn what a face looks like, what are the components that make a face, how they move, the expressions. So yeah, I'm taking it a bit as of a challenge. I made that yellow jumping guy, which is like 5 blobs. It's not very complex, but it was animated, which I had never done before. I made a boy as well in Shadertoy procedurally with ellipsoids and parabolas and a few other things, and he's there just staring at the camera, but he doesn't blink. So I have the yellow guy, which is very simple and but is animated. That boy, sorry, that surfer boy, who is complex but not animated, and now I want to do both. I want to do something complex and animated. So that's the shader I'm working on now when I have a bit of time.
And
And the process in that case, unlike the landscapes and the terrains, which I can make from memory, for characters, I definitely have to look online to see how other people do characters, both for films, for caricatures, and so on, and try to watch a few YouTube videos and see what they have to say about it. And although I don't want to, I'm also not very systematic, as in I'm going to spend 1 week now learning about character design, because I like to put my hands to work and get things going and discovering things by myself. But every now and then I do go online to learn a bit. And I would just add the last thing is that there is a third type of shaders or pictures or paintings or whatever you want to call them that I do, which are just abstract, that they are not either a landscape or a character, but just something that is inspired by some geometrical configuration that I found while trying to discover some equation or whatever. And then, if that's the case, if I'm working on a cubic equation or the SDF of a triangle, whatever it is, then chances are I might take that little discovery and apply it in a shader, which just tries to be beautiful or stylish, but uses that mathematical concept. And normally they end up being very, very abstract, and I also do those ones, although I'm not that good at that neither.
do
Yeah.
you consider the, because it's all procedural
Yeah.
generation, um, do you consider more, you've mentioned math, and then it's I want to go on this, when you work the equation, example for SDF, and there sometimes um, do you find it's more art or it's more math? Like, I don't know, it's kind of a open question, but
Yeah, the process of finding the exact formula
yeah,
for an SDF.
yeah, for the SDF especially, like,
Yeah, so it's a combination actually. Um, so well, we can maybe say for the listeners what an SDF is, I
oh
guess, which
yes,
is it's um it's a formula and a mathematical expression that encodes the shape and the geometry of some figure, like a triangle or a star or a circle. So instead of defining those shapes with vertices of polygons, as you would do normally in traditional computer graphics, the SDF is a purely mathematical representation, no polygons. It's just an equation that you code, and that, through different algorithms, becomes a shape in the screen. So those equations, um, I'm not, unlike what some of the people following me in Shadertoy might think, I'm not so good at maths, as in, um, I don't see in 3D very well, actually.
what do you mean
But
you don't see in 3D?
so there are people who, you give them a Rubik cube and they can solve it, or they can understand how you should solve it, and they can do it. Or if you ask me, what's the intersection of a plane and a cone when the plane is more than 45 degrees, it's not immediately obvious to me that that's a hyperbola or a parabola or an ellipse. Like, I have to write down the things and work out the maths, and then I have an answer. It's not like I can see that much. A little bit, of course, but so when I have to do an SDF, most of the times I do the drawing, and soon enough I convert it to actual equations that I put in the paper. And the very first times, I would go through the naive process of deriving everything through equations and getting a very complex equation, and then trying to simplify it so it runs efficiently in the computer. But now, with experience, I've learned to find the shortcuts before it's too late, meaning I can't find the symmetries of the problem, for example, like a triangle. If it's a isosceles triangle, then the right side and the left side are the same. Therefore, you don't need to compute both. You can just
Yeah,
compute one of them and copy the results or the maths to the other side.
yeah,
So those kind of shortcuts, I can't take them right away now, just from experience. Like, when you have done a thing a billion times, that's the trick, basically.
Do you still find yourself working a lot DSDF on paper, like on or do you?
Yeah, every other week or so, I have a new SDF, and the reason is that I I'm not in a quest really to find or to write SDF equations, but with any new shader that I'm writing, I oftentimes have to derive an SDF because I need it for the thing I'm doing. For example, so it's always motivated by the picture or the art. So in this case, I'm working on a new character, and she's gonna be moving her face and talking, and
The
part of
hacker? Is it the hacker scene?
it's a what?
Is it the hacker scene? The
Yes,
okay, yes.
yes. Right. So when I made her, I needed to sculpt this shape of her mouth, of her face, like the jaw, I guess. And an ellipsoid wasn't giving me enough of a sharp shape to it, and a square was too sharp. So I had to find a new SDF, which allows me to do more like a rhombus, I guess, shape, but extruded and rounded. So I did the equation. And again, now because I've done already so many of them, I can do it in a few minutes, and in 5 minutes it's done. And then I publish it as an independent SDF, and I put it in my website in the catalog of SDFs, and then I move on to working on the shader. So it's always the driving force is always the artistic thing that now I'm learning to do characters or trying to learn. So that's the goal. And I want to impress people with a character that they have never seen in real time as a mathematical equation in Shadertoy or anywhere. So that's the goal. And then as byproducts, I get all these little other things that I publish, which are the SDFs and so on. So the process is very, and yeah, so the process of going through it is very, it's a mix of maths and also those shortcuts that I take, which are either learned by having done so many of those SDFs, or sometimes by intuitions. Like it feels like this SDF should be able to, I should be able to do it with only one square root, or it feels like there is too many computations here. In the end of the day, this shape is just 5 lines. So why should I have more than 5 divisions, for example? Like if I have 7, it's like, I feel something is off here. It's an intuition, right? And then you give another chance to the whole math, so you look at it from a different perspective, and indeed you find that there were too many divisions or something. So it's a mix of math and intuitions.
So that explains very well what I. Thanks for. I was wondering this, and I thought people could enjoy from this answer too. So when you write a scene, like a shader, like a beautiful shader, the
Yeah.
lightings, um, how long does it take, and what are your process? Do you always do lighting at the end? Do you start with basic lights? Like is
Yeah. It depends a lot on the painting. Like those who come from, as I was saying before, the case where I have an equation and then I want to build something with it because I want to put it into practice, then those are very quick and they can go from half an hour to 1 hour, and I publish them. They are not very ambitious neither. I'm not trying to impress the world with that shader, so I just do it quickly. Others which are more uh, technical, could be like a couple of hours. And if there is something like, yeah, more artistic, I want to wow people, like the yellow jumping guy. Although that was a mix because I wasn't planning to make any that shader. I just was trying to practice a bouncing sphere and see how to animate it and make it feel organic. And then the whole thing grew from there. I added eyes, and then I added a background, and so that was 10 hours, and it was split in 2 sessions of 5 hours. So, um, and I normally, even if I had 10 hours in a row, which I don't anymore because now I have a family, while before I could do that, not anymore. I cannot do those beautiful sessions of a whole day. Even if I had the time, I wouldn't, because taking a break and coming back the day after to the shader or the week after helps a lot, seeing things that you didn't see while you were deep into the process of making it. Like sometimes suddenly, you go to bed thinking, wow, that shade that I'm making is looking good. It's gonna be amazing. Then you look at it the next day, and it's like, oh, those eyes are like too far apart, and the shouldn't be green. He should be yellow, and the light, oh boy, that's bad. So it's good to take a break. And but yeah, that was 10 hours. But then the new one I'm making now is a totally different story because um, every step of it, it's I have to learn something. Like just for the sculpting the shape, I spent easily an hour just finding what were the shapes that I needed to use to give good definition to her face. The blinking animation, that she's blinking and moving her face. I went to YouTube to check how the Pixar and the DreamWorks animators do a blinking animation in Maya. How long does it take? What other muscles around the eye area do move as well? And I spend 1 hour just looking YouTube videos, and then I go back to the shader and I try to do it, and that takes me another hour to hit the look I want. So that's very slow because it's a investment. It's a learning process. And in the bigger picture, I might work on it for a day, and then don't go back to it for a week. So I haven't touched it since I did that live stream where I was modeling the shadows and the ambient occlusion in her. And I might go back to it probably next week and uh, make the mouth, and then I will take a break. And also those breaks help me a lot. So in the end, it might be a total of 10, 15 hours, I don't know, but it's going to be spread over a month, if not more, in small chunks of time, because that also gives me time to think about where I'm going with it. Because right now, I'm in that shader, for example, I'm just putting in place the main pieces, which is the modeling is not finished. I still have to put the mouth, and I want to change the proportions, but I'm 70% there. In terms of lighting, I'm 50% there because I started with some generic uh, light rig, like with a key light and a bounce light. But now I'm starting to put a second backlight. I'm starting to slowly uh, transform the generic light rig into something that is more motivated by an environment or a setting. And I have to think of the setting. Is she in an office? Is she hacking into a computer that she shouldn't be hacking into? Or is she making a shader at home? So I take my times in the shower every day to think about whatever shader I'm working on, where I'm going with it. And if I go this route, it has these problems, but makes these other things easier if I take this other route. So I'm taking my time to slowly, so that when I put my hands in the computer, it's useful time. I'm not wasting it into exploring random ideas. I have already thought where I'm going, what's the next step, so I can just go and execute, hopefully.
And a lot of the scene you've written are or have some different kind of not vibes, but they have different look. Some very looks like PBR. Some are more like cartoon.
Yeah.
Do you follow any mindset based on the how the light should behave, how the materials should be implemented? Like, do you like? You mentioned in the stream that you're not like the more hardcore PBR stuff, PBR guy, but what's your?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question. So I do a blend where I use principles of PBR, but not necessarily. I don't go full on PBR correctness, and so I would say that even if the style is cartoonish, it's always good to start from some physical principles. So these days we are all already used to working in gamma, well, sorry, in linear space, doing our lighting in linear space, and then doing only in the end a gamma transformation and perhaps some um, color gain control or something. But it wasn't true a few years ago, right? 5 years ago, this thing was still new. So when that thing kicked in and we all learned of the benefits of doing lighting in linear space and how much realistic things look like, I embraced it right away. So now I never again made a shader without, a square root in the end for the linear to perceptual space conversion. and I never did my uh, my lighting in any other space that wasn't linear, and that helps a lot because again, all the things look more plausible, even if you're doing something cartoony. Like, well, there are two philosophies here, I guess, but I'm taking the Pixar and Disney philosophy, which is when you make a cartoon, which is what they do, they keep shapes stylized. They don't go crazy with adding wrinkles to the face or anything. It's super simple shapes, just enough to convey expressions and feelings. Materials are super simple as well. They don't go crazy with how much scratches and things have, or if they do, they make them very tiny. They keep surfaces very clean. But that doesn't mean that the lighting, but the lighting is realistic in that the way it bounces around, the shadows, the shape, the penumbras, all that is realistic because that helps us understand depth and the relative positioning of things. So I think that's the reason. But that's their formula. Other people go crazy with lighting as well, and they do super weird color things, and that's fine. But I'm taking their approach. I think it's a successful combo there, where stylized shapes, plausible lighting. So whether you are doing photoreal stuff or you are doing that cartoony approach where everything is cartoony except for the lighting, having lighting that is physically based is a good idea. So what I do is I do the basic things of physically based stuff like rendering in linear space and so on, making sure the speculars have a power 5 fall off based on the view angle and the light source angle. So I do some of those things, and also if the specular lobe is wider, it also is less strong than if it was thinner. And there is some formulas there that relate one to the other. But I do a bit of that, but I don't go crazy about it. I don't know by heart the microfacet models. I think I could write them by heart still, but yeah, I don't. I just do whatever it takes to make something pretty. And actually, oftentimes you might find me doing things where I take the n.l term, which is the basic lighting term for a diffuse um, lighting situation, and I might just multiply it by zero point 0.5 and add zero point 0.5. So no part of the surface, yeah, shift it and wrap it around.
Yes, I saw this a lot on your code sometimes.
Yeah,
You mine what the multiply by 0.5 plus 0.5 is that's the trick, right?
yeah. I mean, you can choose those coefficients to decide how much the lighting wraps to the back of an object, even though the light source is not hitting there. You can lick some lighting in there and fill the darks, which is very useful. You could do it by adding more lights to the scene and adding, fill lights everywhere. But that's easy and looks beautiful, and it's very useful for cartoony or painterly situations. Actually, I saw someone doing that in Twitter the other day, and like the big discovery, like, oh, this is amazing, this is what I invented. And it's like, that was used since the 80s by everyone who ever made computer graphics, although now it's discouraged, right? Okay, here's the thing. He or she, I don't remember, uh, was doing it in Unity. And I might have a complaint here about these game engines. I believe I haven't used them, but it looks to me like they forced you into a physically based world or territory.
Yes, well, can I just surf a bit on what you've just said? So
Yeah.
yes, actually I use Unity like daily for rendering ideas and stuff for and the pipe they are completely changing the pipeline at this moment. There's this thing called the URP, it's like the Universal Render Pipeline, and this was leading you, as you mentioned, to be like very very forced and kind of very very like not inefficient, but it was sometimes the shader were coded in a really quick PBR way. But then there's the HDRP. I don't know if you saw it online. It's the
Yes.
high definition render pipeline, and it's Sébastien Lagarde at
Yeah, I know. Yes.
yeah, and he implemented the whole thing, so you can really go hardcore in like the render pass. How do you actually basically how the pipeline behaves from point one to point
Nice.
render? So if you're curious, you can check.
That flexibility is great. Although this is a bit of brainstorm thing now, or I'm making these ideas as I go, but that's great that you can crack open an engine and customize it for your needs. If your game needs to be cartoony, then do the cartoony shader that we were talking about, like adding 0.5 to the diffuse or whatever. And but still means you have to go out of the easy path, which is just using the thing that comes by default, and that's a pity. The same way they have a PBR default, I would say. I would love that they had a cartoony default where all these tricks that we all know about adding 0.5 to the diffuse and colorizing the occlusion and applying a color ramp to the penumbra of a shadow, all those things have been used, for example, by Pixar before they went path tracing and global illumination. The movies I made were full of that because we didn't have GI, right? So if a shadow was looking too dark, you would go to that shadow and multiply it or add a bit of blue to it. And then it looks great. And if it looks too sharp, then you would take a smooth step and separate the dark from the from the brights or whatever. So, and in order to do all of those things, those artists, the lighting artists, had the tools. They didn't have to hack the renderer. They already had all these non-physically based controls ready with nice UIs, like how to colorize a shadow or how to change the shape of an occlusion or whatever. So I wish that these engines had as well the same way they have all the default PBRs nicely implemented, that they had another set of non-photorealistic things with all those tools that the industry learned about for years, for 20 years, since the 80s, and have them available for those who want to make games that are either cartoony in look or need to run very efficiently, say, on an Oculus Quest, where every trick you can use to hit a given look helps because you don't have the performance to start casting rays or doing shadow maps or doing the PBR thing. So yeah, if I was there, I would propose, hey guys, can we put a team of 5 people to work on a nice set of tools for those who need something different?
Do you think the cinema industry is more concise or aware or of the all this stuff, and the video game is a bit more about just being hacky and getting this IFPS?
I would say I almost feel like it might be the other way around, where I almost feel like the game industry. I'm not in the game industry. I've never worked in a game studio. I've never played a video game. I've never used a game engine. But I have used a game engine actually a couple of times. But I read all the papers from GDC and all the presentations, all the blogs by all the game developers. That's how I know Sebastian. And so I kind of think I know what's going on. And I feel like there is this trend where everything has to be correct and not so much, there are not so many rooms for hacks, at least in lighting and rendering. I'm sure they hack everything else. And that's why I was saying that it would be nice that these tools gave you ways to hack, that hacking was a good thing for the tool, not a thing to avoid. Why I think that films, they are all about hacking. First of all, you can hack because every shot is a different thing. Like every shot is a different set of files. There's no, like in a game where everything has to look good from every angle, continuous, you don't know where the user is going to be. In the film, you know. So you basically hack everything per shot basis. And a shot is 3 seconds of film. So every shot has a different set of lights, different tweaks. Every shader has its own parameters that have been tweaked for that one shot. So it's a lot of hacking. And even from a lighting perspective, even in real films, not even CG films, like you put bounce cards, right, for the lighting to be better on your characters, on your character. Yeah, you put a bounce light to fill the holes, and that bounce light shouldn't exist in reality. There is no floating white umbrellas in the street to walk around, but you hack it, and that's fine. So films is all about hacking, and I feel games trying to be more correct and realistic, I suppose, which is kind of the opposite of what the intuition should tell us things should be like, right? Like they cannot afford realistic. Films can, and they don't. I mean, but you could also argue that now you use PBR and path tracing, so that's realistic. But I always think this, as I was saying before, is bringing plausible behavior of light, which is realistic, the way it bounces, in a non-realistic situation, which is having bounce cards and things.
So
So
the art aspect of a movie, this is what you like as an art director, for example. Even if the PBR is correct, you're telling us that in the film industry, there's a lot of acts for feeling.
yeah, absolutely. And you can decide, you have your PBR and path trace stuff, and that helped a lot getting a first look for your shot. So before, when there was a new shot on the film, you would have an artist work for 2 weeks placing 500 point lights to kind of fake global illumination, like, and then you have a first look of the scene, and then you could start working on the art, like where do the highlights go, where do the rim lights go. But with PBR and physically based lighting and path tracing, you hit a button, and in 5 minutes you have something that looks great, and so you saved 2 weeks, but it's far from being final quality. So um, what you do when the shot needs to be approved is you have your global illumination solution, but then you tweak it and you say, you know what, the bounce light is not in her face, is not bright enough. Let's make the bounce of object A,
Mhm.
make it twice as strong. So you can choose, you can fake physicality.
Yeah,
Normally,
yeah, yeah.
the light bounces depends on the incoming angle, the outcoming angle, the PBR, the material parameters. You have the equation, and that tells you how much irradiance is getting out or whatever. But in film, you tweak it. You say, okay, it doesn't look good enough, times two, and you multiply everything or that object PBR by two. Now it's emitting more light than it's receiving. Physicality is broken, but hey, it looks good. So
That's very interesting. I did not know that. Very, very, very nice.
so no, me now tomorrow from Pixar saying, hey, what are you saying?
Okay, like by the way, if before the podcast is approved, if anything you want to, like, because I talk about a lot of like of technical stuff on the show, and sometimes people, the other time we made a podcast, and the guy, he worked at Ubisoft for years, and like
Hmm.
he just talked about the rendering like algorithms
Yeah.
in a game engine, but I was like, wait a minute, that's not public information, so we cut it out. So no
No,
worries.
we are good. We are good. And also, I mean, not what I'm saying is about the film industry in general, not about any particular studio. You just tweak because you need to make the pictures look good because everything is in the service of story, right? And if the moment is happy, but the shadows in the face of the character are dark and dramatic, those things don't match. So you have to pump it up and put a fake light or a bounce card or just take um, some reflectance function and make it brighter. So
So you're a movie fan, right? You said you don't play video games, or you're not in, but you like cinema probably?
I like making films. I don't watch them.
Oh,
I also no, I don't watch films neither, or TV. Like I think last year, 2019, I watched one film.
which
Uh,
one?
which one was it? I think I watched the Pixar release. I have friends working there, so they invite me to see the films when they get released. And what was last year? I forgot. Toy Story 4.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I saw that one, and then at home we don't do Netflix or anything like that. I saw a couple of episodes of um, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Is it the comedian woman in New York in the 50s?
Yes.
I have beautiful. The story is a bit. It's not that strong. I mean, it's interesting, but for keeping us hooked. But the lighting and the costume design and color grading was beautiful. So I like watching. Yeah, not much. I'm not a story person either.
You're more a technical analyzer of a movie.
Yeah, I like things that look pretty.
Yeah, you should. If you're curious, there's a. Is it? It's Wes Anderson. You know, he made. Is it Wes Anderson? I'm not sure. He made a movie on. Yeah, it's called. Anyways, you should check out. I'm gonna send you the link actually, and it's. Well, we're moving a bit away from rendering, but like he is a movie director that is really. using a lot of style in lighting, and when you watch the movie, you're somehow more immersed in the art and the look than the story itself. So,
Yeah.
but it's not a lot. All the director, they don't all do this. And you work in VR. I want to go in
Mhm.
VR, and you've worked on Dear Angelina, the short
Yes.
films. This is, I think, the most like. How do you find like you don't watch movies? That's something I find. I was sure you're gonna tell me I watch a lot of movies. Like it's just you have it in you. You know when you see because Dear Angelina is
Yeah.
wonderfully done,
Yeah.
and even if
Well,
you're
that's a teamwork. So most of the, like in that one in particular, in terms of visuals, besides the technical aspects, which I took care of, but the visuals themselves is 90% the work of the artist who painted it, and the director who had the idea for the story and led her to paint all those things. So my role in that movie was to, well, I was the VFX supervisor, which was meaning, but also look development. So basically, the idea was we want to make a movie or a film which is VR, meaning it's all around you. You are in it, not watching it from the distance. And we are not going to do something cartoony as in a CG DreamWorks film that we had done before with Henry. We need to do something that is like illustrations and drawings. So how do we do that? And that's where I created Quill, the VR drawing and animation tool. So my role there was to provide solutions like making drawings in VR a reality. And what does it mean? So we tried from having 2D drawings in space to having 2.5D drawings, drawings with depth
yeah.
that would be in space, but that still always look very CG. You could see that it was 2D drawings in billboards, basically. And eventually we ended up doing the volumetric painting, inspired, of course, by Tilt Brush, which was created a few months before. And I know the guys well, I'm friends with them. But the Tilt Brush wasn't ready for production to make a full film. And the amount of geometrical detail we needed, the amount of gigabytes of data we needed to move in real time. So I brought the tool, and my role there again was basically enabling the look of the film for then the artist to go wild and bring the creativity to it. And it turned out to be beautiful, I think.
Yes, it is. It's I know you don't watch movies, but if you watched it, you probably you've been. It's wonderful, and I
Well, that one I've watched a billion times, yes.
oh, yeah, yeah, because you rewatch and rewatch through that. It's real. But when you what's the main challenge of writing VR like graphics compared to because
Mm,
it's real time, but it's also like you move all around. And like example, I have at home. I have the Oculus Go. Like this, I think it's the first standalone that Oculus,
yeah,
and like it's not a lot of performance, but like
yeah.
both on algorithms and hardware. Like how do you approach? What's the challenge of writing VR rendering?
Well, the challenge is clearly performance, how much you can do, especially now that VR, it's becoming mobile. You no longer have a PC necessarily
Mm,
to run your graphics. You don't have a GeForce, 2080. You have to run on a mobile phone hardware. Uh, so it's performance, of course. So there are many things you can do. The first one that should be done always is pick your visual style wisely. Don't try to do photoreal PBR stuff. So
into
it's
VR.
another reason to link it to what we were saying before. Like another reason for me to claim that engines should also do provide default cartoony looks and tools to do cartoony stuff, because you have to be smart and you cannot don't try to do what the hardware cannot do, or because if you try, you will end up with something that doesn't look that good. You're going to have to sacrifice too many things: the resolution of your shadow maps, how many of them you have, your speculars. Everything is going to look ugly and weird. It's going to be in a no one's land. It's not cartoony. So because it's not cartoony, the viewers expect realistic, but then it's not good enough to be fully realistic, and you are in a weird place, weird spot where it looks like a game from the 90s or something.
So is it pre-computed? Because like some like immersive VR games, you need to like render what like 90 FPS minimum if you don't want to get motion sickness.
Mhm.
But when it's like just a movie, can you like
No, it's still real time because the user can be anywhere. Yeah. I
oh
mean, during the Oculus Go, which is the one you have, you don't have positional tracking. All you can do is look around. So
mm,
in that case, you could pre-compute things, right? You could render the whole movie in a cube map
mm,
or in a stereo cube map. So you have some eye disparity and you see depth. But that's the past. Like VR is positionally tracked, meaning you can move anywhere. And even not only you can walk, not only you can stand up from your chair and explore any part of the film, but even if you are sitting and you do that, you need some parallax,
mhm,
especially because the interesting parts of the movie are happening not too far from you, because the characters cannot be 20 meters away, otherwise you cannot see them. So you're gonna have parallax. So you have to render in real time. So the tricks, again, the first one, choose your style, and then I would say, secondly, hack the rendering techniques that work for that style. Like you might be able to, you have to render polygons. There is no way around it. Sorry.
no worries.
But maybe things in the distance can be rendered with billboards or 2.5D billboards or as point clouds. Or maybe you can render the left eye and reproject it on the right eye and only fill the gaps of the
Mm,
reprojection. But maybe only works for flat surfaces because you can easily fill the gaps. So if your style is cartoony and everything is shaded flat or very flat, you can do it. But maybe if you have a lot of texture, maybe it doesn't work anymore. So again, everything starts from what you want to see visually and my advice is to work the techniques and the rendering algorithms and the shaders backwards from what's the goal, the artistic goal. And yeah, hack. You have to hack a lot. Another axis to all of this is that besides hacking and hacking based on the style you want, also many of the things that you traditionally do with, say, shadow maps can be replaced by analytic solutions. And that's where my Shadertoy stuff sometimes, my SDFs and my analytic formulas for soft shadows or whatever.
the soft shadow, it where I always get back to this. Like it's always, oh, I'm gonna go on the Inigo's
Yeah.
website.
So if you do it traditionally and you want a soft shadow, you have to render a shadow map and do percentage close filtering and sample it many times. You totally cannot do that on a VR device these days. It's too expensive. But if you replace the objects with spheres, then you can compute exact shadows um, in a very cheap way, just with a few multiplications and one division or something.
Yeah, it's analytically like
Yeah.
yeah.
So you have, and I gave a SIGGRAPH talk, a talk at SIGGRAPH about this, which is my philosophy of sometimes it's worth replacing the problem, which is casting the shadow of my character, by another simpler, more simple problem, which is casting the shadow of spheres instead of a character, and then solve that problem exactly and perfectly. And often can be that. So it's like making an approximated solution to an exact problem, which is a crappy shadow map for a character, versus an exact solution to an approximated problem, which is perfect shadows for the spheres that approximate the character. And I think a lot of that has to be done these days because, again, a mobile device, if you're rendering at 90 FPS, you have 11 milliseconds to render your scene twice, or maybe
Yeah, for
one and a half
two
times, depending if
twice.
you're in multi-view or something.
Sorry, what I think the audio lagged. You said twice.
Oh, yeah. So you have to render in 11 milliseconds both eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the slow way to do that is rendering twice, one for the left, one for the right. But there are tricks where you can, do most of your work only once, like first cooling and traversing the scene and sorting your objects by material or whatever, and then doing the rasterization twice. But still, it doesn't become twice as expensive. It becomes just 50% more expensive than mono rendering. Um, Luckily, the latest devices, like the Oculus Quest, is not 90 frames per second. It's 72, I think. So instead of 11 milliseconds, that would be, I don't know, something else like 14 or 15 or something.
And you that's very very nice. Do you work? Do you still do VR stuff, or you're?
No, I'm taking a break. I'm focusing now on Shadertoy and videos for YouTube and live streaming, more educational stuff, not so much pushing technology forward,
Yeah,
which I
because
did.
you've moved freelance
Mhm.
last
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
Is it? Do you like it? Do you miss the industry? La-
um, well, I'm not doing so much work. I'm taking a small vacation, although I took a couple of small gigs. And I don't know. I mean, not working is awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Cannot be done forever, especially here in San Francisco.
yeah. It's expensive there. I
Oh
like.
yeah, it's yeah, it's stupidly expensive here, obscene. But I mean, I miss it and I don't miss it. I miss being in a team. Like when I was at making Quill, the impact of the work we were doing is huge. We were shifting the industry of animation to starting to use VR tools like big studios and things like that using VR. So that was exciting. The daily work, however, not so interesting. A lot of, you know, you have to, if you lead a team, you have to do a lot of things which are not probably your cup of tea. While what I do now, the daily work is great. I get immersed in my shaders, but the bigger picture right now, it's a bit weak. As in, yeah, I'm trying to make videos for people to learn computer graphics, but I'm not succeeding at that yet. I don't have that many views. So right now, the bigger picture is not successful.
Yeah, do you think it's just well? Let me ask you more a question. It's not that related with graphics. You said you don't have many views. Do you think the winning of producing content is only by the views or by the like? Because your videos are like they have
Yeah, I think it's a yes and no. And the yes is that I'm using the views of my videos, not so much as I want this amount of views because of monetization or whatever, but I'm using the views as an indicator of is this resonating with people,
uh-huh.
and especially I guess the derivative of the numbers. Is it going up? It can be a little. I don't need to hit millions, but if it stays the same or the numbers go down, it means that I'm not improving at what I'm doing, or the content I'm doing is not getting new eyes, or I'm not getting new people to learn things, which is the point of what I'm trying to do. If the numbers keep going up, it means like, okay, the things I'm doing are getting better, more interesting, more people are talking about it, must be good. So there is that, but um, yeah, I mean, if I wanted a lot of views, I guess the thing is, what I'm doing now is very niche. It's only for people. I mean, even the titles of my videos are SDF of a box.
Yeah, yeah.
That probably means nothing to even
Most
within the population of programmers and computer graphics. Still means nothing to most of them. Not everyone knows what an SDF is.
yeah, because it's the
So
niche of the niche, right? So like
yeah,
there is
exactly. I think I'm like 3 levels in the fractal of nicheness.
and
So
you still that's nice. So you will produce more live stream like the
yes, yes, I want to do more live streams and also more of the produced videos, more of the tutorial educational content. And those ones, I think the live streams, I'm gonna keep them niche, that first level in the in the universe of nicheness. But the other videos, I'm gonna step one level up or out, I guess, and make it more available to more people. I want to make the next of the next video probably more for starting to teach people who don't necessarily know computer graphics, but know a bit of math or are nerds enough that they could follow a math explanation, and talk to them about how we use math to do graphics in Shadertoy without having to go into the depths. And hopefully, because when I was a kid, um, the thing that got me into not computers but science in general and maths was Cosmos, the show by Carl Sagan, the American astronomer.
I will Google. I think I'm too young. Wait,
Oh,
Cosmos show. Wait.
yeah, super famous. You might not. He died of cancer when he was very young. But this TV show and also a book which I had at home was pretty much what inspired me about the universe, how it works, the rules, the physics, the principles, and that got me into science and all that. So my dream is to do something like that where I can reach everyone and make a portion of that, of those people out there, fall in love with the creative use of maths, because everyone knows you can use maths for engineering, to design the engine of a BMW car, or to do accounting, or to do research in medicine to know how many patients got cured with this vaccine, and therefore we do the Bayes theorem and we know whatever. But people don't know you can use math also creatively, just to make a character pretty, and not only in Shadertoy but also in films and games. So I want to spread that word, and that means I have to make my videos way less niche. I have to step out a couple of levels in the technical.
Yeah, that's fair. I completely agree with you on the math. Like I started graphics programming, and now I study math because of the creative aspect of it, and not
Yeah.
like the most like solve this problem like on paper. I think computer graphics is good to actually make
Yes.
creativity of math. Do you know like Daniel Schiffman is on? You would probably very love his content. He's the guy is named the Coding Train. So
It's a YouTube channel.
yeah, it's a YouTube channel, and he's written the book "The Nature of Code," which is it was one of my teacher that like gave me this book, and I was like, oh, that's good. And it's the guy really used processing like P5GS, so it's not that much like shader based, but he explained a lot of like the math and the theory. So it's like
I found it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. I have seen. Oh, sorry, I have seen him. I saw once in my YouTube dives. I found him. I never saw him again, but I remember seeing him for sure.
he produces a lot of content. Let's say like he do the every Friday he makes the live stream, and it's it's like 4 hour, and he's a funny guy. Anyways, that was just the recommendation.
Nice.
So that's is there anything you'd like to talk, explore, say? Subscribe to your Patreon. We're gonna make the link available too.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm all for promotion. I'm not good at that, but so let's see. I have the main thing is probably my website. I don't know how to spell it in English, so it would be iquilezles.org. Long name, but I chose it in 1995, 1998, and stay there. But that's the main website. That's kind of the central point where everything else is linked to. And from there, you can access my YouTube channel, which has tutorials, um, both for beginners and lately for less beginners. And then you have my Patreon page where you can help me with money, so I can I can try to keep this vacation for a longer time and make as many videos as I can. And also there you have access to the live streams, which are not public in YouTube yet. So from there you have access to my live streams, which is quite dived in. No safety net, no rehearsals before I jump into it, and I just do the things and explore how I made some of the shaders that I have in Shadertoy. But also sometimes I go for new stuff and I improvise it, like the last one. You have shadertoy as well.com/users/IQ, which all my shaders. My Twitter account at Iquilez, IQUILECLES. And there is where I give the news of new shader, new tutorial, new stream. So yeah, those are the main access points, I think.
Oh, and I forgot. Well, I forgot to ask you a question. What do you think about the new RTX Nvidia? We're getting back to like 3 questions before, but I had a note and I was like, oh, I need to ask you this.
Yeah, I haven't tried it because I feel that the low-hanging fruit. So I'm not a researcher, as in I'm doing many things, right? My shaders and so on. I'm not in an office with a tasked with doing research in computer graphics, like when I was in Oculus or whatever. So therefore, the time I have to do stuff with it is limited. And in that limited time, I would only discover or invent low-hanging fruit discoveries. So other people will do that before me. So if I had full time, I would go and try to do research and invent new stuff with it, but I don't have the bandwidth. So I'm also trying to go in the opposite direction of everyone is doing. When everyone is doing polygons, I do ray marching. When everyone is doing ray tracing, I'm doing something else. Just because when everyone goes there, it's easier for me to go there and find something because everyone is busy in that other side of the industry. And also, I think things will become very interesting when there is more of a open pipeline, as in, rasterization in the GPU. First, it was fixed pipeline, and only with the explosion of shaders, only with the introduction of shaders, the amount of techniques exploded, and the research and the creativity. So I think that ray tracing right now is too fixed pipeline style, like in that you can do these 5 things, and that's it. If they opened it and you could build your own data structures, your own acceleration structures, you could write your own traversal code, and then I could start doing SDFs inside the bounding volume hierarchy of the GPU. Then I would find it interesting, but they need to open it a little bit farther for me to.
So you would use ray marching in BVH.
Yeah, I have done software experiments and it works well.
Oh.
So the day they give me access to that, I will enjoy it for sure. But right now, it's not interesting enough. Also, I have a bit of a fear that, and this is more of a philosophical thing. I hope no Nvidia people are no one from Nvidia is listening, but well, I guess yes, that would be great. But at the same time, no, because what I'm going to say is that I feel like films only moved to ray tracing 5 years ago, as I was saying earlier. Pixar moved like 3 movies ago. Only after they have completely exhausted everything that rasterization could do, and they had done it perfectly. Like offline rendering solved because of not. So the GPUs are doing shading in screen space, which was good for parallelization, but bad for many things, including how you solve motion blur, depth of field, and all those things. The film industry did the right thing with shading in object space, solve motion blur, depth of field right from the beginning, from first principles in the 80s, transparencies, anti-aliasing, hair rendering, all those things, all those difficult problems, they solved them perfectly with rasterization. And only after that was perfected, they jumped to ray tracing. While hardware, we still don't know how to do proper anti-aliasing. We can only do 4x without exploding the amount of GPU memory. We don't know how to do transparencies. So divisions are not widely used. Depths of field and motion blur are always a mess. It's always in screen space and halos, and it's all a hack. So I feel like the real-time industry graduated to ray tracing prematurely before they solved the core problems of computer graphics. And you could argue that maybe ray tracing helps solve some of those, but at 4 rays per pixel, that's the budget we have, it doesn't. And even if you introduce denoising and all those things, still screen space tricks. So while in practice things would work, I feel like the industry failed at solving the core problems of computer graphics in real time. And sometimes it is fine when you are in a path and you don't solve the problems. It's okay to open a new path and see if that helps eventually to solve the problems. So maybe ray tracing and AI solve the problems eventually. But right now, I feel like we got defeated. Like we switch gears before we solve the problems that we could have solved. But that's okay. We are not here to solve the problems at a philosophical level. We are here to make people enjoy games or whatever they are doing with real time. So anyway, all that to say that, yeah, ray tracing is great. And when it's more open, I will use it.
Very nice answer. Well, it's and maybe are you still rush on time? Because we could go on and.
No, we can do a bit more. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you make fractals now. It seems like.
Yes.
Yeah. First, let's talk about how did you use its volume? How do you render fractals, basically?
How do you render fractals?
Yeah, like it's volumetric, right?
Well, it depends. There are many types of fractals. Fractal is it's a generic term for any geometrical structure that repeats itself at different scales or repeats close enough to itself. So there are, yeah, there are all sorts of fractals: deterministic, stochastics. Some of them arise from complex dynamics, like the Mandelbrot set. Some of them are volumetric, 2D, 3D. There is a whole zoo of fractal stuff. I did start very early. Actually, some of my first computer graphics when I was 13 or no, I did start with 14, I think. My first computer graphics were fractals, actually. It was a Mandelbrot set and a Julia set. And I learned those from a magazine, which my teacher of philosophy at school gave me and told to me, look at this thing of mass and fractals. And I learned from there. And those are 2D, and they are just a few. I mean, I was going to say they are easy to make, but they are easy to code, but difficult to understand mathematically. So over time, I got better and better at understanding the maths of fractals. The actual why do these things happen? Why do these structures repeat themselves forever? And with this amount of twisting and deformation, why not other amount of twisting or deformation? So yeah, at some point, I met Benoit Mandelbrot himself,
Oh, when?
and I gave a talk with him. I mean, not that we were at the same level, but I gave my talk, and right after he gave talk in the same stage, and it was part of the same program. It was cool. So I got good at the math behind the fractals, but then I didn't. I stopped at some point, and he would have had to become a professional mathematician to keep learning things. But I wrote a few papers and things.
Yeah, you definitely have some article on the website
Mhm.
that explains. And do you enjoy writing this? It's more like because that was part of what we discussed. It's like it's really. Some people argue it's not art. I don't want to go
Mhm.
necessarily in this.
Yeah, I have an opinion on this. As with everything, I guess I'm very opinionated
Okay,
of
well,
areas.
go on it. I'm curious.
So, thing is, I did start with fractals myself, and that's how I fell in love. Oh,
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 it's
did
not
we
working.
drop the connection? Ah, it's back. Okay.
Sorry.
So, I did start with fractals, and that's how I fell in love with computer graphics because it was like you put maths in the computer and then pictures show up. That's crazy. And I did beautiful. I mean, beautiful. I'm not an artist, but I made some interesting pictures, and I was part of some uh, art galleries and stuff like that. So one of my paintings uh, went around the world and in a bigger uh, exhibition and things like that. But at some point, I realized that I wasn't in full control of the picture. Like, the algorithm, the fractal, the parameters would determine the basic shapes, and then I could tweak the colors, I could deform things a little, I could choose how the layers blend, but it was me tweaking on top of something that wasn't mine. It wasn't my creation, it was the math's creation, and I was then applying my own touches to it. So I switched gears to me being the full art director of the picture for all the pixels. I wanted to be in control of all the shapes, and that's where I am now, right? With the shaders, I put the ear here. If I don't like it, I move it down, and I put a tree in the back because I want it. If I don't like, I put a rock. If it's not a rock, I'm in full control. I'm art directing the whole equation that makes the picture, and I love that. So I switched gears from fractals, which was a hybrid thing where you choose some aspects of the picture but not everything, to having full control. So I went from, as I call it, I went from doing mathematical art to making art with mathematics. That's how I call it.
Because
Yeah.
that's true. Like in fractals, I've started getting into fractals like a few months ago, and what you explained there, I was actually not able to put words, but like now you explain it, I'm like, okay, now I get it. It's not only me. Like it seems like you need to invent your own fractals to become like because if sometimes, especially the Mandelbub, like sometimes you just go in the algorithm, you tweak just a little thing, and it's like it explodes, and you're like, oh no, it doesn't work and
Yeah.
stuff. Do you have an interest in interesting your own fractal? Like, would you like to invent one or?
Um, no, I mean it's very easy to invent a new fractal in that, as you say, either by accident because you tweak a parameter, or by design. Like almost every polynomial, like the Mandelbrot set is c squared plus c. any polynomial, that's a quadratic polynomial, but any one you write that has degree 2 or bigger will produce a fractal under iteration. Or any fraction with a polynomial in the numerator and a polynomial in the denominator will produce a fractal, like the Newton fractals.
But will they be beautiful? Like,
Yeah, they are all equally, or yeah, they are all pretty, I think. And I mean, those, it is true that all the polynomials look similar,
okay.
but they don't, but because of that, they don't all deserve a name, right? So there's no point of me making one and saying this is the Inigo fractal. There are other types like exponentials or all sorts of things, which, yeah, it would be great. But yeah, even the traditional names like the Sierpinski triangle or the Menger sponge or the Koch curve or the dragon or even the Mandelbrot set, I almost feel, or the Julia set, I almost feel like giving names to those things is a bit, I don't know. Well, I guess they discovered it. It makes sense. But once we know enough about those objects, keeping the names is a bit, I don't know. I don't like it because does this particular formula deserve a name and all the others don't?
Yeah.
While properties that drive that one formula are the same properties that drive all the others. You know, there's nothing special about that one in particular.
Yeah, that's very interesting because, like, especially when you take like example the Mandelbrot, or you mention the polynomial stuff, and you apply them, it's it's not like, wait, let me just in French I know how to say it, but in English it's like, it's not um, it's not necessarily a mathematical proof, right? It's just a way to use. So, like,
Yeah.
so example, like we were talking about Fourier, or like Poincaré and stuff, like, or like the guy who solved the conjecture Henri Point, la conjecture de Poincaré. I
Yeah.
sorry, like he really proved the thing with sometimes with especially with naming the fractals. I don't know if you can. We're philosophing here, but it seems much more about here's how I use this formula, and here's my fractal.
Yeah. I mean, there, as I was saying before, there are actual maths that go behind understanding these formulas, and some of the theorems have names. uh, and but most people don't know them. Like I know them because I read those papers, and there are different specific points in the boundary of the Mandelbrot set which have properties that, and those points are given names of the researcher who discovered them, or the Duady Howard potential, or the green functions. There's a lot of maths that actually explain why the fractals work that way, but explain all fractals, not that one Mandelbrot set or whatever. But it is true that uh, giving a name to a particular configuration from an infinite amount of configurations, and all of which are equally interesting, doesn't make sense to me. But I mean, there's some historical reasons for those things. But yeah, and the only one thing I know, I was thinking in the second thread of my head, you were asking inventing a new fractal. I was thinking everyone has been chasing finding the equivalent of the Mandelbrot set in 3 dimensions or 4 dimensions, I guess. And the Mandelbulb was one such attempt to generalize the Mandelbrot set into 4 dimensions. It wasn't successful, although it is a pretty fractal. It's a beautiful one, but it wasn't the right generalization. So I guess proper mathematicians are working on it. I think it's unlikely that someone will just tweak a formula and find the proper mathematical, meaningful generalization of the Mandelbrot set, if there is. But yeah, I did, of course, try those things back in the day to do 3D fractals, and yeah, accidentally discovered kind of quaternions, a bit simplified, but like quaternionic fractals. Anyway, yeah,
That's
at some
interesting.
point I got into that, basically, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so the quaternion. Wait, you talked about quaternions. I just want to go quaternions fractals. That's interesting. Did you write on it, or?
I have a small article, but it's not specifically, it's about 3D fractals, and it's very similar to quaternionic fractals. It's like a projection of quaternionic fractals. Yeah, I do have an article about that. Yeah, it's the natural way to extend things, because you take complex numbers, and instead of 2 components, you build numbers which have 4 components. You call them quaternionic, and then you define, or you decide what are the rules for multiplication and addition, And you can invent different rules. And with every set of rules you invent for your numbers, you have a different algebra, as they call it. And different algebras that you invent have different properties. But the one of complex numbers, which is the most useful, the most used algebra for numbers of 4 dimensions, you get these properties where you can multiply numbers very similarly to complex numbers, and then you apply the same formulas and you get the same behaviors. Like some points converge, some points diverge, and then you, based on that, you plot things, and then you get a fractal image. So, yeah. But for those, you need to do ray marching. Actually, that was my first contact with ray marching.
Because you need to, and the ray, when you ray march using fractal, do you do a fixed amount of iteration, or you?
My first implementation was like that, yes.
Okay.
And I made a few videos which are still exist in YouTube, which were done with fixed step ray marching, yes. But then I learned 2004, I think, there was this professor of mathematics, Keenan Crane, I think his name. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly, but he published an article about rendering Julia sets on the GPU, like quaternion Julia sets in the GPU. And the GPU implementation wasn't the interesting part to me, which it was, of course, because then things render faster. But it was the paper that he linked to, where they explained how to compute the distance field of a fractal to do distance field ray marching. Yeah.
So that's very nice. So some fractals you can actually query space. Like,
right. Yeah.
Not all of them, but the Julia sets. That's interesting.
Yeah, the Julia sets, anything polynomic, like it's made of a polynomial, you can. Anything that is based on boxes and circles and inversions, like the Mandel box, you can as well super easily compute an SDF. So yeah.
Well, that was I think if you want to add something, if you want to.
I think we touched on so many things.
It was very interesting.
You have is it the lighting equation there on the back on the wall?
Busted, yeah. I painted it because
nice.
Yeah, it was one night I was with a friends, and I don't know, we decided to paint it. So yes, but now it's getting dark in here because it's winter in Montreal, and it's like
all right,
we don't have a lot of lights now. At 4 o'clock it's dark and it's snowy, and well, it's, do you go to SciGraph this year, or in?
Wait, what? Sorry.
Do you go to SciGraph this?
I might go. Yeah, I don't know. This year is in Washington, I think.
Washington.
Normally it's in LA or Vancouver. So I don't know if I will go, because now with my daughter, I don't like leaving home for too many days, and LA is easy because I can go sleep and come back. But Washington is further, so I don't know. I will do SIGGRAPH Asia probably.
Okay. Well, if you are in DC, let's go and have a coffee, because I'll go there. So, well, thanks a lot for joining, and I wanted to talk to you about ski, but I forgot. So, do you still ski in the US, or?
Yeah, I mean, the slopes are not too big here. We are not in the Rocky Mountains. There are a lot of resorts, but they are very steep, the first part, and then flat.
Yeah.
It's not so interesting.
Okay. Anyways, that was the little note I forgot to ask you. So thanks a lot for joining, Inigo, and I will send you the link when the podcast is gonna be.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.